down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on Vinyl and Vision.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 126. Today's very special guest is Mike Hranica. First, I'd like to just mention that as you can see, if you're watching the video right now, I am in my office, which is a mess. Sorry. It will get better eventually. But this might be my my setup for a while, because for some odd reason I lost power out in my shed where I normally do my recordings, and that happened in the middle of my conversation with Mike today. So that was no fun, not a great situation to be in, but I have to thank Mike because he made time for me on 2 days prior to his very big tour with the Devil Wears Prada that he was preparing for at the time. So yes, for much gratitude to him to allow this conversation to happen, and I'm very thankful because it was actually a really great one. So Mike's a really great guy, from what I can gather from having spoken with him for these brief moments, but I've been listening to his new album from his band Town of Lake. It's a solo project, and the album is called Lilac. What you're listening to is a track off of that album called Can of Soup. At the end of the episode, I'll include a short clip of another song off of that album called No Gloss. So it's an interesting album. From all of the reviews and interviews that have been done with him and about that album so far, the overwhelming consensus is that it's a very challenging record. And I don't know if I agree with that completely, but I'm of a different mindset where, you know, I appreciate and I feel like I can understand music a little bit better than some other music critics, because I'm not really a critic, I'm just more of a music fan. And so we go over that. I discussed that in depth in this conversation, as far as like what is interesting about this record, how I feel about this record, his record that is. And honestly, yes, I do think it's a very good record. I won't go into the details because they're already in the show. So, the other topic of discussion was PJ Harvey's Eye Inside the Old Year Dying, which is a new record. Now, this is Mike's pick for what we are calling an influential record. It's hard to call it an influential record because it's so brand new. It's only a year old. It's just like, how much influence does that have over his art form? And you know what? I don't think I actually asked him that question. But it is interesting because we all love PJ Harvey and think that we all know that she's wonderful and incredibly talented. But I was able to parse together these parallels between their careers, and I think that was the primary focus of this conversation that we had. And I think they're really quite great insights. So I hope you like the conversation. And if you do like the conversation, please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of those things. They help us immensely, and they cost nothing. It's wonderful, isn't it? If you care to help us out in a financial way, you can always visit our website, psychicstatic.net, and make a purchase there of anything that is in the store. I'll package it for you and send it to you immediately, and those sales help us keep this thing going, and we'll possibly repair our electricity in the shed. So, thank you very much, folks. Enjoy. Hello, Mike. How are you?
I'm sorry I'm late. It's a hectic day. I just sprinted up to the hotel room. I went to the wrong hotel, so that's a great start, but I made it. I've been much more late before.
Yeah, this is nothing, man. 2 minutes is that's completely acceptable. So Mike Hranica, right? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yep.
Okay. It's a pleasure to meet you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So we got a lot to cover. I've been doing a lot of research on you and your newest record, the project Town of Lake, and the album Lilac, right?
Yep.
And but you're also part of the band The Devil Wears Prada.
That's correct. Yep.
And you guys are leaving for tour like the end of this week.
Yeah, so we did two shows in Vegas over the weekend, flew to Kansas City for rehearsals, drove to Lawrence this morning. We're rehearsing here in Lawrence, Kansas today and tomorrow. And then drive day Thursday for show, Friday in Grand Rapids. So it's getting busy.
Yeah, it's hectic. Okay, well, I mean, I appreciate you making the time to speak with me in that case.
I mean, any time for Polly.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, I love the concept. Again, I'm sorry, I'm running a little behind. I'm a little frazzled here.
Okay, no problem. All right. Well, that's like we're gonna chill out right now. We're just gonna have like some serious kind of music time. Okay, we're just gonna designate a couple hours.
Love it.
Okay. So let me see. Usually I start with like maybe getting the background on the person that I'm speaking with. So I mean, you want to tell me about where you grew up and where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I was born in Pittsburgh. My family moved to Ohio when I was three, I think. I spent a little bit of time in Japan from 5 to 7. I graduated
Hmm.
in 2007 in Ohio. In 2009, I moved to Chicago. I spent 9 years in Chicago, and I've then been in Milwaukee, Wisconsin since then. So,
Okay.
um, yeah, I don't love the Ohio part, so I often kind of leave that at the side. But
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask about. I mean, is it Columbus that you were in?
I was north of Dayton.
Okay, so that's not Columbus. Where is that?
It's like it's in terms of north south about the same, but directly west of Columbus. Columbus is like dot in the middle.
Okay.
Dayton is like due west hour 15.
Okay. All right. Because I remember I heard an interview with you. I don't remember which one it was, but you spoke of a friend of yours named Micah.
Oh yeah.
Is that's not Micah Schnabel?
No, Micah Sedmak.
Okay. Then I don't know him. I thought I was
Okay.
just assuming. I was just like, oh, Ohio. Okay, it might be that guy. All right.
It'd be crazy if it was Micah. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if it was the same Micah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, this is the guy from Two Cow Garage. They were
Uh,
from Columbus.
Oh, I didn't know that. That does sound familiar though.
Okay. Yeah. Early 2000s kind of era. Like I think that's when they were at their prime. So,
Gotcha.
um, all right. Well then, so I won't go too much into Ohio then. But so growing up in the house, I mean, most of your childhood it seems like was in Ohio. So I mean, like, what do you remember about music as a young kid?
Um, my family was very musical. My dad, I was talking to someone about it recently about his like 300 disc CD changer, and he made like a catalog for it and whatnot. My earliest memories, I think, in terms of music was like REM.
Hmm.
Um, my all around my family always loved music, but no one ever played an instrument. Like remotely, no one had ever picked up anything.
Yeah.
Um, I was a very inward teenager. I didn't have very many friends at all. Angsty, issues with self-esteem and everything, which is how I gravitated to aggressive music. And I joined a band when I was 16. Um, really, I was in a joke band, but that was like my first band, and it's become my living now for 20 years now next year. So, um,
Oh, so the Devil Wears Prada was your first band.
yeah, yeah. Now I've been doing it over half my life, but
Right.
there about halfway through, I started a band called God Alone, and that fizzled out. And then I wanted to keep doing something very far away from Prada, which
Hmm.
resulted in the town of Lake.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because I mean, like, I'm not a fan of the Devil Wears Prada. I mean, I've definitely heard about your band. I've definitely heard some of the music over the course of the years. I mean, I'm a little older than you as well. So that's kind of like something that kind of came in just as I was kind of also hitting the phase that you're in now, where it's just like I want to get into more experimental stuff and like kind of weird stuff, whether it be jazz or noise rock or whatever. So, um, so that's why, like, I listened to your record, the new one from Town of Lake, and I gotta admit, the first time I listened to it, I kind of didn't know what was going on. It was a little weird for me. And then I like weird music, you know. I mean, like I try to listen to everything. I listen to Captain Beefheart, Troutmass Replica, you know. And and I couldn't hear it. But then I listened to it again, like more clearly, a little bit more kind of isolated, and I definitely heard it. I definitely heard what's going on a lot more. And it's actually not as like unaccessible as I feel like a lot of people are making it out to be right now.
Yeah, yeah, the Devil Wears Prada acts towards accessibility um, as a part of the process.
Hmm.
Um, I throughout my various creative side ventures over the course of my career now, I've never acted in terms of accessibility, and Town of Lake is very, um, I think, sort of a staple for that. I think that proves that. I
Yeah.
don't have much interest in anyone liking the works that I create, specifically Town of Lake, but I do want people to hear it and at least decide that they don't like it.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, that's been a bit of the rollout process. I mean, we started this, my buddies that worked on the record with me before the pandemic, and it was always like this is gonna get shredded on YouTube or whatever from Prada fans, and that's perfectly fine because I didn't make it for anyone but me, and
Right.
um, it's fun releasing music myself. You take it for granted after releasing over 8 LPs and EPs and live records and whatnot. I haven't had much experience releasing music myself, so I
Mm.
didn't want to farm or look for a label or anything. And I like to keep busy, and sometimes it works against me, but
Sure.
it's been amazing creating um, the uncomfortable room that Town of Lake is, and I look forward to continuing the venture early next year.
Yeah. Oh, are you planning on doing touring for it?
I'm not planning on it, but we do already have dates for a second LP
Okay.
to get going on that. I don't anticipate it will take as long as Lilac did. Again, there was a pandemic, and
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was struggling to get by, and by all means, not just monetarily. So yeah, it took a while, but it's really motivated me and inspired me, and some people that I really look up to have said all kinds of kind things about Lilac, and yeah, whether that was there or not, I'm excited to make more music that um, explores the mundane and the routine, and speaks to um, I think my most cathartic thoughts.
Hmm. Okay. I wanted to ask you about the whole touring aspect because I think I heard an interview with you where you said that you weren't really, I believe you said you weren't planning on doing any touring for this album. And I didn't know if that was true or why that would be.
I just created the songs without any sort of live context. I created the
Okay.
songs to express myself, and frankly, I just don't have the time to realize what playing shows for the project would look like.
Yeah.
It's funny when I started experimenting with drones, it was very much that like that was going to be the avenue for making drone loops, and that it was going to be more of a live situation than not. But where I landed with Town of Lake was layering up music that at least right now feels like it would just be too much of like an iPod playing an MP3 with a guy talking over it rather than
A
um
band.
yeah,
Yeah.
formalizing a band. Um but I would love to change that. I would love to a part of the writing process for Town of Lake is to not so much say like where the song is going to end up, but deeply distort what the process begins with. Um, so really, I could see myself implementing different exercises with future music, the same as I did as far as like, okay, write everything to a lyric.
Hmm.
I could say something like, okay, write a song that maybe has 3 parts or something, like I find that like kind of honing the reins at the beginning of the process is so much more important to create a different piece by the end rather than saying like the end needs to be different, but we're going to start the same every time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I kind of want to turn things on its head with that. And a part of why I could see like, okay, like if Town of Lake were to play shows, what was like write a song that would open a set or something, you know? Like I had
Hmm.
never considered anything like that when I made Lilac, but um again, it's a project that I'd love to carry on forever. I've always said that if the Devil Wears Prada grew inactive or anything, the reason I love collecting gear and playing guitar is because um I love to play and I love to express myself. If I never made another record, then that'd be a bummer with Prada, but at the same time, I've now found an outlet in Town of Lake. So
Yeah.
um yeah, well, I'd love to see what it would look like live.
Yeah. Well, so what is the instrumentation on the recording like? Which is that what hinders you from even thinking about, or is that like what kind of obstructs the idea of what how you would perform it live?
I think so, yeah. I think I can't imagine constructing a band or having the time to construct a band to play what the music does, or the room setting. Um, I've never played like seated theaters, and I have no idea what it's like to try to play a seated theater.
Yeah.
And I find that's the avenue for Town of Lake. Like that I that's where I see it. Um, Although I think in a not dream world, you know, it's a dingy, loud dive bar, and I don't know that that's the setting for the songs that make up Lilac.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, I could see it either way, really. I mean, it's all a matter of like how do you like what do you need instrumentation wise? Like, how many players do you need and what kind of instruments do you need to make this music come alive?
Yeah, absolutely. If I were to start digging in there, I don't know what that number would end up looking like. It's honestly a little anxiety inducing at the thought of it because,
Yeah.
again, you know, I work in a world where a lot of the music that I've made a career touring around in other bands is our tracks. You know, you play to a track, and a lot of bands don't have bassists or keyboardists, or they have any number of guitars all tracked. And that's the reality we live in. It doesn't do anything any good for me to complain about it, but it's certainly not where I see Town of Lake. And I wanted to to go about making Lilac without any kind of inhibitions and without limits. And with that, we injected all sorts of different kinds of sounds. And um, for a group of people to recreate that, I just don't know what it would look like. And I don't know that while it would serve the album itself, I think the album coming to life and coming to fruition. And I went to my furthest limits to create a vinyl record that sounds as best as I possibly could without looking at money, with just spending recklessly, really, just
Hmm.
because I believe in a quality vinyl record um and wanting to offer what I love and purchasing music to anyone interested in Town or Lake. So I've uh I've poured a lot of my focus there rather than the live setting. And
Hmm.
um, the thought of like playing New York or Chicago and small shows, which I really love. I loved when God Alone was doing that for a brief period of time. It would be really awesome for Town of Lake, but um, the Devil Wears Prada keeps me busy. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. No, you got a big tour coming up as it is right now. So, um, well, I was going to ask you about that, but then I realized that you actually had a member of the Devil Wears Prada joining you. Mason helped you on this recording. So, like, how does the band feel about you going off on your own and creating a new project?
You know, I don't think I share so I don't think my musical tastes align so much with all the members of the Devil Wears Prada, but at the same time, Jeremy and I are the two original members, you know, going back to 2005. Um, and with that, we hold a relationship and a friendship that has outstanded a lot of different sorts of tribulation, I guess. A lot of hurdles thrown our way, and we've always put our head down and just went through it, whether it's a pandemic and finding a way to pay the bills or struggling with ticket sales or whatever. With that, I think we hold a very mutual respect for one another, whether what he chooses to listen to versus me. I think in terms of Mason, that Mason has an ear that I love and respect so much, and definitely felt like when I went to Andy Nelson about recording the project, I don't even remember the initial conversation with Mason about like, hey, do you want to come to the studio and see what happens?
Hmm.
And Lilac, I don't remember how many sessions it ended up being, 5 or 6 maybe. Um, but he lives in Kansas City. I live in Milwaukee, and I would fly him in. We would crash at a friend's house in Chicago, and um, yeah, he has a great ear. He's introduced me to all kinds of wonderful music, and he's a fantastic bass player. So I owe much to him for writing much more intricate parts, and I think really any moment of like groove within Town of Lake is so fueled by Mason's bass playing.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I can hear that. I mean, a lot of the music is actually really great because, like I told you, I like challenging music. Like I wasn't afraid to get into a record that, other people are considering to be challenging. As a matter of fact, I don't actually think it's that far out there. I think it's sparse. I think it's really kind of like it's got a lot of room, and I think that that's the thing that maybe a lot of people don't like about music that is challenging because it's like they don't want to have to fill in their own blanks or they don't want to have to wait for what's coming. They want to just be given the stuff and be given like this, kind of short, concise thing.
Absolutely. It was, geez, I think it's been 10 years now since I started looking at music as, the absence between sounds rather than the sounds themselves.
Right.
Um, which very much speaks to, I Inside the Old Year Dying from PJ Harvey last year. But
Hmm.
yeah, Spare City that yeah, I kind of find that catchy is bad a lot of the times. Like I don't
It's,
something stuck in your head seems like nagging and annoying rather than
yeah.
something challenging you.
Or it can be boring.
Yeah.
Just repetition of the same thing. I mean, like it cuts both ways, because,
Hmm.
a chorus is catchy and it's catchy and it does that thing where, everyone can sing along to it and everyone can have a great time kind of singing along to it and even almost like anticipating it. But yeah, it can be boring because it's just like, okay, yeah, I remember I've heard this already like so many times. It's like it's been pumped to me through the radio and everything. I've already listened to it like 5 times today, and now I'm going to go see the band play it. It's like that's where it's kind of like a little annoying, I feel.
Yeah, I can definitely get that way. I think a lot of music is serves as an escape, and I don't think that anyone has the right to tell people to why they should listen to something.
Sure.
Um, but a lot of the times I don't think that I want to escape when I listen to music. I think I actually want to dig in.
Yeah.
Um, and with the records that I personally love and enjoy, we'll I mean, again, like I was listening to this record earlier, and digging further into the lyrics, but just talking about things being turned upside down as an entire notion of like a song's lyrics
Hmm.
is to me deeply fascinating rather than I love you or
Yeah.
something like that.
Right. Yeah, it's complex thought, kind of provoking, you know.
Yeah, again, I just like there are certain like I love listening to jazz in the mornings in terms of serving like my home and my kitchen and my wife and my dogs like that energy. And maybe there's something there that is kind of escaping or it's establishing like a background noise or, looking at any number of like Brian Eno records. But um, I don't know. I just don't think that when I listen to music, it's to like escape my daily routine. Because in fact, and I've stated this ad nauseum practically, but I find routine very interesting.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's what so much defines us, as far as living our 24-hour days. Um, the I don't know, examining the mediocrity, I suppose, to some extent.
Right. Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I think jazz is an interesting choice for the morning. Depends what kind of jazz too. What are you listening to? What's your first grab, do you think?
I mean, my introduction was Everybody Digs Bill Evans.
Okay.
So really Bill Evans was like an early one. I'm trying to find my kind of points with like Sun Ra, but of course Monk, Coltrane, um Mingus. I
Sure.
snagged a really terrific Mingus record that's Mingus just playing the piano when I was last overseas, and it's spectacular. So I've only read one book. I'm very much an amateur when it comes to jazz, but I have a shelf set aside, and I find it where I most often veer towards when I'm visiting a shop.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Jazz is interesting in that regard. I mean, there's just so much there. I mean, then it's like you have to dedicate your whole life to really kind of wrapping your head around it. So I'm nowhere near it. Trust me. I got nothing on that. Um, but let's see. I wanted to talk about your album for a little while. Let me think. So I just want to maybe throw out a couple examples of like what stuck out to me about your record. And I think so I guess it was the second half of the first track off of your record. So I guess that would probably be Sin Titulo, the because it's got two titles, that song, the first track.
Right. I made the song in one file, basically. We constructed it,
Okay.
and I didn't want to break it down into two physical tracks. So I think of it as two songs in one track.
So there are
Um,
two very specific parts.
yeah, I consider it that. And I just didn't see what the point of splicing it in the middle or like a crossfade or anything. Why not just
Yeah.
leave it as it is?
Sure, sure. Okay. So I felt like the second half was like a methed out Johnny Cash on an all-night drive.
It was, I visited Mexico City last summer, and there was a man, I was sitting with the Devil Wears Prada's manager who was down there with us. And we were having a coffee, and a man approached in this like thick wool pea coat, and he just started talking about music production and Sinead O'Connor and whatnot.
Hmm.
And there's some kind of murmurings of that on the back part of the song, but it's basically some um
Oh yeah. What's the role of a producer? So it's like that in the background.
yeah, that was something he asked. He was asking about it for his daughter, and I just kind of plugged it onto the song as like I personally don't use any sort of drugs, but it feels like a weird trip. And there's a prostitute named Stella Marie that's tripping over like the sidewalks where the tree's roots bulge up. Um,
Hmm.
and that was the vision. I visited some really amazing art museums in Mexico City. It was all around just an amazing trip. It was my I think third or fourth time at least, and I never had such a good time as this. And when I was in the art museums, I was like, why is everything called Sin Titulo? And then I'm like, oh, without title,
Yeah.
which made the song's name for the back half of the track, if you will.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's a great observation to make. And it's it's a kind of a cool divisive thing for a song, because it's like everyone has an untitled track,
Hmm.
but this one is, taking the inspiration from Mexico City, I think you said, right? Mexico City?
Yeah, I think it's a much better title than Mexico City.
Sure. Yeah, or untitled. Yeah, much
Yeah,
better. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So now I really love to hear your explanation on that song and kind of like where it's coming from because when I was asked to speak with you and asked you about like what album would you want to talk about and you choosing PJ Harvey's newest album, I Inside the Old Year Dying. That's the name of it, right? Yeah, I Inside the Old Year Dying. I got to keep on checking because they got that title that's the same thing minus one word. Um, it was interesting because I mean, look, we all know and love PJ Harvey. Okay. I mean, I am not a huge PJ Harvey fan, but I have researched two of her albums now. I'm pretty sure. I think I talked about two of her albums now. So I was already kind of familiar with the history, some of her older records, and I have kind of this happens a lot, right? When you listen to a band for a long time, you trail off as they kind of keep on releasing records. So I haven't listened to this one, and I didn't even know it. Actually, I didn't even know it came out. I have just been so into my own thing that I haven't been paying attention. So I'm getting into it now for the first time, and I'm also getting into your album for the first time. And these two albums, I mean, like I literally was toggling between them where, I was listening to her album, it would end, put your album on, and I'm just like the mind meld of all of this music, to fresh sets of ears is I couldn't even tell like I forgot who I was listening to at times. It's like you guys share a lot.
It's the space between the sounds, I think, so much, and I think I find it so remarkable, like listening to like Rid of Me or Dry, like these killer records that just
Yeah,
defines so much from her early career, and then seeing what she did here. And
right.
like I think that like Let England Shake, one of her newer albums,
Hmm.
I think it's called like the Hope Demolition Project.
The Hope Six Demolition Project.
That's it. I
Yeah.
just picked up that LP. I haven't spun it enough, but um I don't know. I one of someone told me, my buddy Kyle told me that Lilac feels like you're in a room, and I think I Inside the Old Year Dying feels like you're in a field.
Hmm.
And I kind of got that too with Let England Shake, but even this morning, going over these songs and here on my computer, which is I like listening to vinyl records, but listening on my computer with her website with the lyrics pulled up, and I didn't realize that she created her own entire like lexicon practically of
Oh yeah.
language.
Right, right.
It's unbelievable. Like, what is it?
Well,
I,
it's Dorset.
okay.
It's the Dorset dialect from where she grew up, actually. So it's like a kind of old English, basically. And so, maybe we should address the fact that, this just got split up and we obviously look different. We're obviously in different settings and so forth. But yeah, but we left off speaking about the Dorset dialect. And that was what I was going to lead me to ask you about, like if you had actually read her book Orlam.
No, but when I was going through the lyrics leading up the other day, I ordered a book. I'm not sure if it was that one, a book of poetry.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm not familiar with it. It's been coming up in my research, but essentially this is like what do they call that? The like accessory piece to that novel because it's in poem form, I guess, and it's written in the Dorset dialect. And
Oh,
so,
strange.
yeah, this
Yeah,
is like the musical version of that, basically.
huh. Yeah, so I ho ordered a book called The Hollow of the Hand from her website the other day.
Oh, okay.
Should be waiting for me, but no, I wasn't familiar.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I assumed as much because, you didn't know about the Dorset dialect thing either. Because if you had read the book, I'm sure that maybe this album makes even more sense in that case because it's literally the companion piece. That's the word I was looking for. Companion piece to the novel, which is essentially in poem form. And it took her
Hmm.
like 8 years to write, so it's supposed to be pretty in depth.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah. So that's actually another one of those things that I was kind of making comparisons to her and to you and your careers because you're also a writer and a published one at that, right?
Yeah, self-published, so there's an asterisk there.
That's okay. I mean, you're still doing it. I mean, and you have multiple works, right? And are they like fiction or are they also kind of poetry based?
The newer ones are mixed up poetry, sort of, but in a longer form. To me, a la Burroughs.
Hmm.
But the first thing I wrote was around a record. I basically just explained all the lyrics. But that was over 10 years ago. But
Okay.
yeah, otherwise, I'm always writing. I'm always trying to
Yeah.
come up with something else. So it's been a minute. I need to dig in a little more.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do a lot, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, that's why your two careers are so parallel, I feel, I mean, like, there was this there was this fact that I came across about PJ Harvey and her friend Steve McQueen, who's like a film director, not to be confused with the old actor.
Yeah, I heard they were friends as well. I love Steve McQueen's work. 12 Years a Slave, Hunger, Shame. Um, yeah, fantastic English director. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's also a accomplished sculptor, I believe.
Hmm.
And so he's one of these guys that does multiple things, and
Hmm.
so it was kind of his meeting with her or her meeting with him that inspired her to kind of move in this direction to push herself to, you know, work outside of the realm because like she was feeling stuck in a rut as far as
Hmm.
like, getting into that routine of songwriting, record recording, and then going on tour, you
Hmm.
know. So I don't know. I was curious to see if like maybe you felt the same thing or if you feel the same way.
I, I certainly get restless. I don't have the worst attention span, but I definitely love being busy as far as jumping one from one project to another. The way I've always described it is that I kind of feel like um, different creative endeavors for me are like different rooms, and I get sick of being in one room and I need to walk into the other room every so often. So,
Yeah.
for the most part, I find that I can never really work longer than like 4 hours on anything really.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, like in one day, I'll get sick of being in the confines of one room and need to walk into a different room. So
Hmm.
it doesn't work so well as far as consistency, but I've kind of found that to be my method as far as when I feel creative in whatever sort of scenario or application that I'll need to like walk to a different room.
Hmm.
Um, pending what my idea is.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I guess I kind of feel the same way now that you say that. Because I
Hmm.
mean, like I do multiple things as well, and so I kind of try to designate my time to like, okay, let me put a few hours here into this, then I'm going to go over here, I'm going to do a few hours over here. But PJ says that she actually kind of treats her art much like a blue collar job, where she actually puts in like an 8 hour day. And I mean, so you're not like that, is what you're saying.
No, I wish I could say I was. I've certainly worked with musicians that are that well disciplined. Um, I
Yeah.
find the same with like writing. Like I've written, I kind of say like one and a half novels that I've never published years and years ago. One of them I never finished writing. The other one just needs a fair amount of work. So, um, but yeah, that was kind of the I always think about that because it was really hard to start every day for me. But then 15 minutes in, it's like the dam is broken down and the flood's going. So, um, yeah, as far as like an 8 hour workday, um, I think it would work well for me, but I'll need to get up and then I'll read for a little while and then be like, oh, I need to get to that. And um,
Yeah.
I tend to mix in all sorts of whatever errands and cooking and um, again those routine happenings.
Right. Right. That does it makes sense too though, because I just had 4 weeks off of work, and
Hmm.
so I've been home. I've actually it was healing from an operation, so I had minimal, movement and a capability. But was feeling restless. I'm like, I'm sitting in the house for fucking 2 weeks. I don't want to like be doing nothing.
Hmm.
So I kind of did that same way, and I kind of feel like what you're saying is because when you have a whole day to not have to go think about, oh, I got to be stuck somewhere for 8 hours of this day. There's so much time in the day, but then there you get overwhelmed by like, well, I didn't get anything done today. I only did two out of the 5 or 6 things that I had planned, because it's because like if you get caught up and just kind of forget where time is going because you're too busy, you're focused on the one thing, right?
Certainly, I hear that.
Yeah. So that's definitely something to think about as far as like trying to uh, you know, create routine and
time manage, I guess.
Hmm.
Um,
Certainly.
so I'd like to ask you a couple questions, just a couple more about your album before we move on to tackling PJ Harvey's "I Inside the Old Year Dying." One of the things about your album I was kind of curious about, at least, well, let's make another comparison. So PJ Harvey was working with John Parrish and Flood on this album as kind of co-producers, I guess. And all of them have corroborated saying that none of them knew exactly what they were going to do going into the studio. I guess PJ had demos, but essentially they didn't know how they were going to approach these songs in the studio. So it was very much an improvised session. And I was curious, like, how prepared were you going into your recording?
Not.
Not at all.
I would go in with very little, and I think the biggest thing that made Lilac what it is that the idea was to come in with a means of making the song more so than having the song already there. Which is like how I mentioned, like some songs would be like, I wrote this, I'm gonna go speak it in that room over there, and let's create ambient sounds behind it. Um,
Mm,
I would think of songs like Tumult Cheater or Shall I Let You Leave Me, both songs like that, as far as being pretty sparse, as you said the other day, or sparse and minimal. So to me, it's just having that one little piece and kind of taking it and seeing what we develop from there. But at the same time, I really don't want to make the same record again when I start working on the next LP. So
mm,
I actually intend on building out a little bit more. Um, I specifically worked on I call it my amp room, which is just where I collect guitars and amplifiers, pedals, and all this, and got it organized finally, and bought some monitors and built a desk and whatnot for me to be able to um, an interface as well too, to where I can bring sounds and actually have them rather than taking these ideas and try to recreate them in the studio. Um, it kind of works back to like creatively and very much with music. Like as soon as I'm looking at a screen, I'm pretty out. Like I want to be touching and feeling and working that way.
mm.
Um, lyrically, nothing is ever really typed out. Like I've been in so many writing sessions now, and like on your iPhone, you can like collaborate on a note. So you and like a producer or like a top liner, members of the band, everyone is looking at the note in their phone, and I'm like, it just completely sucks the magic out of it for me. So
Mm, yeah.
um, my process and what I find best is being able to touch and handle things. And now I've actually worked to give myself that space um uh to be able to try to capture a little more at home and have a little more in the studio in terms of therefore creating a different record than Lilac next time around.
Yeah. And going back to that point, because you mentioned this in our earlier conversation, and I was asking you about going on tour with the Town of Lake project. Do you think that going forward with this new recording, you're going to be more conscious of, you know, how could I put this on a stage if I want it to be at this point? Because, you're at you were at an impasse where you weren't going to be touring this album.
Correct. That's certainly something I would like to keep in mind is if I collected the musicians and I did want to find the time to play live. Um, I know with all certainty that uh, im improv improvisation is a huge part of Town of Lake, and I definitely don't want to lose that. Um, but at the same time, maybe having a little bit more of a skeleton as far as what would this look like live.
Hmm.
Um, although any time where I feel like that's gonna like suffocate what the song could be to be like, well, we can't do that because it won't go or it won't happen live. Like, I don't have any interest in that. Like, I want the songs on a vinyl album, and that's the most important thing to me as far as at least as the writer and the designer for the product that I'm breathing into the world.
Yeah. And I want to ask you kind of a weird question. I've never asked this to anybody before, but this album is such a departure for you from what you're normally, known for doing. So let's say you were finished recording and you do the playback to the whole thing finally, like, not just one song, but you listen to the whole album basically. What were your impressions of your record?
Um, Honestly, pride. I've outside of the Devil Wears Prada, I released a record and an EP with God Alone, but even God Alone was very much handled by Kyle, my bandmate in that project, as well as the Devil Wears Prada. But he still led the charge so much. And as like the songwriter for Town on Lake, like I've really never led that. Like I've put in riffs here and there with the Devil Wears Prada, and for the longest time I composed like 100% of the lyrics. But um as far as making a record by very much with the help, very much with the help of Andy Nelson and Mason, um it's a little bit of stepping off a ledge,
Hmm.
and I knew that 99% of the people that might know my name and listen to it probably wouldn't like it because it is very much a departure from um, poppy metal, if you want to call it that, or like heavy rock.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm proud that I saw it the whole way through. I never started the project to make an album. I started the project to express myself and start creating songs. And um, with COVID and everything, the songs would end up having quite a while to sit there until we came back to them and start writing more. And it was like every time we would make the time to do that and get the three of us all together in Chicago, it was like I forgot we did that, or I forgot that little sound there, or the um I remember reading it was like a Nick Cave little quote about Push the Skyway, and he called Warren's the loops that Warren's make like a baby's heart in an incubator. And I found that very moving. And I kind of think about that as far as like creating um, loops and sounds that actively mimic a heart or breathing.
Hmm.
So to answer your question, when I come back and I say this is everything that's there, I felt proud of doing of stepping off that ledge, I think.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now I'd like to ask you uh about the PJ Harvey album. When was the first time you heard this album?
Um, I know like I having it here in Apple Music, I see A Child's Question August and I Inside the Old I Dying. Um, well, Per at the Gate too. They have those dots which mean single. And
Oh,
I
okay.
can't recall which single I heard first, but I have been a big fan for a while and I recall just checking Pitchfork daily as I often do and seeing that she announced a new record and um, hearing the song and going, this is an automatic pre-order for me. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I definitely got into the album as soon as the vinyl record arrived. I just thought it'd be a little more interesting to go with something newer and even um, discuss songs that I don't know word by word and whatnot, and
Sure.
I, those albums that really shape you, 20 years ago or one thing, but I thought I'd mix it up and kind of turn it on its head and go with something quite fresh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love it and I appreciate it because I mean, there's been so much here to kind of like, dive into and kind of tear apart and and like I said, it's funny to me as the outsider and doing the research on both of these things, your album and her album, and how much they overlap, and so that's kind of a really interesting perspective to kind of have and to maybe even keep going forward. Like when people hear this and they want to know, it's like, well, what is this album that Mike made? And it's just like, well, first of all, I want to tell you that it's very good. For those people to speak to your point that, or maybe are Prada fans that you think wouldn't be interested in this music, I think there's just a kind of like a mind frame that you have to kind of be in. You put it on and, give it two shots, first of all. Secondly, if you kind of like in your mind compress the songs down, you know, because like there's still structure there. It's not like it's just kind
Mhm.
of free jazz. It's kind of sounds like, a lot of noises that are happening kind of spontaneously. There's very much structure. There's very much like verses and kind of choruses and bridges. So if you just kind of consolidate them in your mind, it's a pop song, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think of the song's outros are very much a thing.
Oh yeah.
The songs always kind of start with a lone element.
Hmm.
Um, and those are tendencies the same as, we might say verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus, like you could see it that way as far as I almost kind of want to say like the tendencies of the song structure. Um, but yeah, like we talked about the other day, I'm also like kind of the opinion where I'm like, um, why does it have to be catchy to be good? And is catchy good?
Well, and,
Um,
and what is catchy? Because I think
right.
that some of these songs on your album are catchy. They have these moments which certainly grab you, and they're certainly like, interesting and have a pulse to them.
Yeah. Quite literally. And like that, even like using the lyric pulsing in certain songs or, um, that's in the Sing to Tulo song, pulsing. Um, but yeah, I think also like what makes something catchy, like I love that because for me personally, like harmonies and what the chords are doing to create a poppy or like hooky chorus like just doesn't align with me so much as far as like the songs that get stuck in my head are usually riffs and a vocals just this rhythm that's gonna what kind of pops out in my head when I wake up in the morning or if I'm standing, at my record shelf and I'm like, what do I want to listen to? And like something comes to mind. It's usually not, I would say it usually doesn't fall in the confines of what makes like a pop song on the radio or like the most conventionally hooky music.
Hmm. Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention was you're obviously a fan of PJ Harvey, and like I'm saying, I think that you guys have some comparisons between what I've learned about both of you at this moment. I mean, how do you think she would feel about your album if she could get her hands on it?
Oh, geez. That
I
makes
mean,
me
do you
nervous.
want her to hear it?
I want I might have mentioned the other day. I want everyone to hear it, but I don't care if anyone likes it.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, I would be like through the roof. She is God. Um, but I don't know. It obviously that'd be the most flattering thing in the world. Um, and while she has such range and so many, like I don't really even sing. I've sung my whole life, but I can't sing, which
Sure.
is kind of funny or coincidental, I suppose. But yeah, what the sort of like falsetto nature to a voice, obviously I don't contain that kind of range, but if she
Right.
liked some of the loops that we constructed for Lilac, in that like the airy, like the sound of a ghost kind of, that's something I really like. And um, shoot, I wish I could think of it. There was actually when I was reading the notes to the lyrics on Inside the Old Year Dying, there was a word that meant ghost, but um,
Hmm.
yeah, I certainly get those vibes from her, and I try to use the same thing. So
Yeah.
if she heard it and any quality of it, if she liked one tiny thing about it, then that'd be a big W in my book.
Sure, man. No, I hear you. So, all right. So, like I was telling you, I think I'd like to try to do something a little different, and I'd like to try to just play this album through and see how far along we get with it. Because, frankly, I'm I don't like analyzing records, but that's all that I do here. And with this record, yeah, it's fucking stupid. With this record, I mean, I feel like I would be at a huge disadvantage and a disservice trying to do that. especially considering, like I said, there's a whole book that is kind of like, it's companion to this. So there's a lot going on in this album that I'm not going to touch on at all because I just don't even want to like, I would have had to read the book and I just didn't have the time and I wasn't going to go through that effort. I just wanted to appreciate the music for what it is. So let's just go ahead and put it on and then we're going to kind of talk over it and do a couple of notes will go in there as it plays, okay?
Yeah.
All right. So Prayer at the Gate is the first song. So about this song, Prayer at the Gate, I mean, in an interview with NPR, PJ is asked about her use of the Dorset dialect in this song, to which she replies, that was one of the keys that opened up the world that she was writing about. Um, so I don't know if I noticed any particular theme throughout your album, but was there something that played a major role in the composition of Lilac?
Um, Honestly, I think the biggest thing was that I went into this with an expectation, but I wasn't familiar with Scott Walker. And then when I met with Andy about recording songs and writing songs, he introduced me and it just changed everything for me. And it feels a little distasteful to be like, oh, this artist in his later works like defined a project right off the bat because you kind of think, well, what's been in the back of what have you been existing on or living off of for all these years in terms of your taste or the things you like and what informs your output. But to me, that was the thing that shaped it so much, or just like out of the gate, like as soon as I heard it, I was like, this is huge. Um, and I feel like also because he did the record Soused with Sun, and Sun is one of my favorite bands. It was already just this immediate confluence of like something so lyrical and vocal with drones, which I really, really love and plays a um plays a pretty notable presence throughout Lilac, just droning guitar parts.
Hmm. Okay. But that's not something that's necessary. Well, I guess droning, I guess, is probably the main, the backbone of the material, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I just like I briefly mentioned it the other day, but I was like, at one point, I wanted to create a project that was much more live than record, and I just wanted to create drone loops in a live setting and explore that. And I've heard interviews, like I believe that music can tell the future, and I also think that, or I know that music can teach us so much in performing it ourselves. So I had like an idea for that. Um, it never came to fruition, but then somehow when Town and Lake was making these songs, drone just found its way in very naturally,
Hmm.
as this like abrasive cloud, like talking about the record feeling like you're in a room, like kind of like a what the fuck just walked in here.
Sure. Well, I mean, and to speak to this album, I Inside the Old Year Dying, I mean, like there's so much texture going on here. And not different from Lilac, I feel, because um I know that she was using Autumn Term is playing right now, by the way. Um there's so much like sonic landscaping that's done and
Hmm.
and she actually kind of utilized a lot of like field recordings and so forth to actually kind of start the musical process. Like I guess I can't remember who it is. It's this guy named Cecil, I guess, that was working on this album, and he was kind of in charge of the field recordings and the manipulation of them because they wouldn't just be playing and you just hear the sound of like trees rustling, but they would be manipulated in a way. So, but there's a lot of texture in that regard to this album. And I think the same for Lilac. I mean, like, I don't know if you were focusing specifically on like field recordings or found sounds or something like that.
The only The only thing that kind of comes to mind is I think it's Can of Soup when we have this. It's kind of like being at a train station. You just hear people walking around and scuffling about. But otherwise, we definitely there are any number of sounds across the record that aren't an instrument, so to say. The last track on the album, Drops Gather, is um, chopping wood. And we didn't, that was physically bringing logs down in my axe and chopping wood. And kind of just like taking like a rock, and throwing it and see where it lands, and that forms this section. And then there's this four-part vocal that repeats throughout the song, as well as like the drones that swell in and out and different percussive elements. But yeah, I love field recordings. I think it's really cool. And even Prada's had times where we've had a part where it's like we shouldn't have ever recreated it, even though the fidelity or like the quality of the sound is better, when you're in a studio, like there's a certain
Right.
magic about it.
Yeah, the
Um,
spontaneity, the kind of immediacy of something.
exactly. And always like being in that room at that time. Um, but yeah, nothing like I certainly have ideas. I don't want to give them away now as far as creating sound or creating something and putting a mic on it and seeing what that does.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, the drops gather, and I think it was I don't think it was like the second song we did, but it was definitely earlier in the process. But the like whacking sound is an axe going through wood, and then when you hear it fall to the ground, it's the log splitting and falling in half.
Oh man, that
Um,
song drove me crazy. I was like, I was like listening to it, really closely, and I was just like, dude, if I was like kind of like a little whacked out and like had my eyes closed, just like listening to this, I swear to God, I would just scream in the room, just like, would somebody stop dropping that fucking can? Because that's what it sounded like. I was just like, it just sounds like somebody fucking dropping something in a room, and I'm just like, and it's repetitive, so it kind of like just makes you go a little crazy.
yeah, and then the bass, really just harmonics on the bass a lot of the song. Um, but yeah, the reason that's there is because the songs always have a notion of normalcy. And again, like I've said this before a lot, but I find great drama in the ordinary. I don't like fantasy.
Hmm.
So in terms of like the literature I consume and whatnot, um, that's what attracts me so much. The same as even in like TV, come to think of it and whatnot too. But like, um, yeah, like, I'm singing about cooking or cleaning the house, and just the same as those chores, I chop wood for the fires during the winter. So,
Hmm.
um, Andy was really excited at the challenge of microphoning that process, um,
Oh, I
and
bet
there are
that's
all
cool.
the other kinds of things too. I mean, like, um, Death of a Neighborhood, the end of it, I wanted it to feel like you were leaving. So we mic'd up cases closing and wrapping cables and the cables smacking the floor. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so it's like we're leaving this setting, and how do you purvey that through sounds and whatnot? And to me, it was like, oh, you pack up the band or you pack up what's happening in the studio and you leave. Same with like the foot's or your feet walking and whatnot on those laminate floors. So
Hmm.
um, not the most traditional field recording techniques, but yeah, it's not like there are two guitars, bass, and drums, and that's the the record.
Right. Right. Well, so Lonesome Tonight just finished actually playing, but I think that this song is funny because I heard PJ speaking about it in an interview, and she said that she was having a hard time with the finger picking of it. Which I think is weird because I mean it doesn't sound like it's too difficult to do, really, but whatever, that was her challenge. And it just made me wonder, like, if there was an element on your new record that you feel like really pushed you.
Um, Honestly, no. The most difficult bass and guitar parts were played by Mason, who's a much, much, much more capable musician than myself.
Hmm.
Um, I've always been enamored with bad singers and bad guitar players.
Oh, cool. We gotta hang out.
I very rarely like someone that sings well. PJ obviously would be a huge sort of counter to that.
Sure. Well, she's
But
unique too.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, but like if you said to me like end all favorite guitar player, I probably wouldn't be able to say, but I know in the top five there would be Roland S. Howard and Steve Albini.
Hmm.
Um, and Steve, everything that Steve did was, I think, pretty um well, it was very jaggedy
Sure.
or angular. Um, it was not comfortable for the most part. It felt pretty cold a lot of the time. Um, so really just like across the board, shellac records and Steve's guitar playing very much informed my taste and informed a lot of what I wanted to do in God Alone and like the elements I brought to the band God Alone. And then stripped down even further is what the guitar playing is in Town of Lake. Um, I kind of just think of that and I kind of think of like cool interludes I like. I remember I can't think of her name. There's a British band called Savages, and their first record, Silence Yourself, is just like it's incredible.
Hmm.
Um, and the guitar player was saying that she was living in this house in college or something, and she was trying to play these I don't know if it was birthday party songs or Roland's solo project or the Roland S. Howard songs. And she realized that it wasn't that she wasn't playing the right notes, it's that it just couldn't be played like Roland, and how he did it. And to me, I love that, when people say like they hear music and they say like, I could do that, it's like, but you didn't. You didn't have the idea. And even
Right.
like, I don't know, I hate the masturbatory nature of chops, when it comes to guitar playing.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, as much as I love the really talented pianists and jazz players and whatnot, within my own work, the I just have no interest, and very rarely does the dexterity of a musician speak to quality for me.
Sure. Sure. Well, I think that you need to be kind of confident in your ability, right?
Hmm.
And and that's the thing too, is just like you take any instrument and you don't have to be virtuoso at it. Like you have to make it your own and give it the sound that speaks to you, but also that can kind of be your thing, that can make you unique. And like Roland S. Howard, I think is a great example of that because I'm not going to say that he wasn't a good guitar player. I just think that his sound is so unique. So whatever he had to do to get that sound, whether it be the guitar that he plays, the amp that he plays, the pedal he goes through, or if it was technique, whatever it is, I mean, that's what he built, and I don't think virtuosic playing uh like dictates, or the I can't think of exactly the way I want to say this, but like the impact it has,
Yeah, or if it's conventionally considered good, you
Correct.
know.
Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah,
speaking of singers, Lou Reed, horrible singer. But I mean, he's pretty consistent. I mean, and I love him to death. I love what he sings, and then, like, I would never fault him for that. But like, yeah, he doesn't necessarily sound like a good singer.
exactly. And to be perfectly clear too, I don't mean to say that Roland or Steve were bad guitar players. What I
Right.
mean
No.
to say is that by um our sort of contemporary standards, their sound and the way they play guitar isn't what you would hear on the radio, or
Yeah. Yeah.
like received as like mainstream top 40, award show music.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely not. Um, so we already got past the song Seem and I, which I don't like saying that phrase because it just doesn't roll off the tongue. But that's Dorset for basically saying seems to me, seem and I, seems to me. Okay. Um, so but PJ, speaking about that song in response to a question she had, she said that there's a lot of darkness in our world that we deal with on a daily basis. And I think to see humor in really dark things can be a lifesaver. How do you feel about that statement?
Um, Sorry, I'm reading through the
Lyrics?
yeah. Um I'm so long-winded. I'm sorry. I wanted to make note that the last song I love that she sings about Pepsi Fizz and like banana and peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah,
Like interjecting that into this world
right.
is brilliant. It I can't say enough amazing things, but
Yeah.
sorry, your question was
Well, that's okay. I just wanted to get your feel on what that quote is. She says there's a lot of darkness in our world that we deal with on a daily basis, and I think to see the humor in really dark things can be a lifesaver.
I love that.
I mean, do you see that the world in the same way? I mean, are you trying to find humor even though we are dealing with shit constantly?
What shit are you talking about? Um,
It could be you could take that on anything. You could put that towards anything at all.
yeah. No, I love that. I a lot of the time I don't take things too seriously and even laugh at things that really shouldn't be laughed at, but I kind of find it as a means of survival for me. I kind of think uh I've been reading a fair amount. I don't know how to say his name correctly, but Michael Ondaatje on Ondaajte.
Okay.
Um, and he mentioned it was a Nietzsche quote, and it was, um, "We have art so as not to die of the truth." Um, and that
Hmm.
really, really rocked me. And I think the reason I mention it now is I kind of see the same. We can use humor as to not die of the truth.
Yeah.
Um, I think perhaps providing some of that levity or finding comedy in certain things that would certainly be considered dark. I mean, I don't know how I'd ever be able to survive everyday shit if I wasn't able to laugh at it or find a meme not to get to me, and I think using humor is a nice means of perhaps not letting something get to you.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I agree. I think was it the song "The Nether Edge" that has the mention of the Pepsi Fizz and the peanut butter
Um,
sandwiches, whatever it is.
I think it was was it Lonesome Night?
Was it
Lonesome
Lonesome
Tonight.
Tonight? Okay, I can't
Um,
remember. I don't have the lyrics in front of me, but
I've got my in her satchel Pepsi Fizz peanut and banana sandwiches.
hmm,
For this man, her shepherd is parts her bready lips. Are you Elvis? Are you God?
yeah. Well, see, now that
Incredible.
speaks again to the story. See, I know if you
Hmm.
got the book, I think that would seem more understandable because from what I gathered in the research was that the story of Orlam kind of revolves around this character, Iris Abel, I think her name is, but it's a younger
Okay.
girl
Hmm.
who's living in this fictitious area of England. So it's not Dorset, like where PJ grew up, but something fictional but similar. And yeah, I guess my horrible recollection of it, summarizing just there's the whole story and this album is basically a year in her life, and every song represents a different month. So and plus like so she lives in this weird countryside in England, and then there's also some aspect of like um what's the correct term, sexual assault, I guess, that happens. So
Okay.
yeah, and so I'm not sure if that Christ figure, that Wyman Elvis character that she created, who is supposed to be this Christ-like figure, I don't know if that's the perpetrator or if that's just something in her imagination, like maybe her guiding light or her you know who she looks to for solace in this troubling time that she's having. And I could be
Mhm.
slaughtering this synopsis, because I didn't read the book, but um but yeah, there's a lot more to be found out if you really wanted to.
I didn't even know about the book, so you've got a leg up on me.
That's what I didn't know about this album until you said you wanted to talk about it. Um, but no, but it's great, I mean, and like, and thank you for choosing it because I should have listened to it anyway. I mean, PJ's great. We all know that, and I now that I know that it exists, I'm happy to get into it, and I'm certainly listening to it more. Um, one more question I want to ask you. So the song "The Nether Edge," right? There's a line in the song that really stuck out to me that says, "With the silence upside down, horse atop the rider." And you were mentioning this earlier, how like this device that she uses lyrically, where she's kind of like mentioning all of these opposites, all these things that are happening in opposite. And but tell me, like metaphorically speaking, do you ever feel like the horse is riding you?
Um, that's interesting. Honestly, probably more often than not. Um, I'm looking at because there was something else. Also the way she sings, the upside down, the inflection in her vocal just immediately sticks in my head. I
Hmm.
thought it, oh, airs an upturned ocean.
Yeah.
That one really popped to me a few days ago. Uh, Um, yeah, I mean, horse atop the rider, to me that reads like what we're meant to control is actually controlling us.
Right.
Um, and that I'd say that's certainly a notion I could resonate with.
Hmm. Right. It's kind of like that Fight Club mentality. Like the things that you own start to own you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean that song was great, and such a interesting device to use lyrically, and like again, in relation to the story, I don't know. Oh, I forgot a major part of that story, that Orlem is actually a dead goat's eye or a dead lamb's eye. I can't remember.
There is I know she sings of lamb and you.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then there's sheep in here. Sheep is mentioned a number of times.
right.
This might have been one of the word I was trying to think of when I was talking about ghosts. The word Soonir, Soonere,
Okay.
a ghost. Just there are layers here.
Yeah, very many. But if you didn't read the book, you might not be able to grasp onto all of those points merely. But to speak again to another point that you made earlier, like your friend said how Lilac sounds like it's you're in the room, and this album sounds like it's being in the field.
Mhm,
Uh, that's a very apt uh observation because
mhm.
yeah, like this is supposed to take place in the countryside, and so all of those found sound landscapes, sonic landscape things, you should be able to feel that really, that like you even though I know that wherever they recorded, which I don't know exactly where they recorded, but I do know that it was like in a room and in the studio, they were able to kind of create that landscape and kind of put you in that setting, even though they were, recording in a room.
Which is incredible. I mean, to me, that almost speaks to, when we're talking about like what would qualify as good and if virtuosity qualifies as good, like
Right.
I think it certainly measures up as far as like if you're a musician that can play the drums or the guitar or the piano, or you can learn any song and create that production. Obviously, that speaks to a huge, um, a huge amount of talent. But
Hmm.
at the same time, I think what really deeply intrigues me and my own personal subjective taste is for a group of musicians, and not to say this is exactly how it went, but it's saying we're making these songs, we're making an album meant to be in the countryside and in the fields. And it's like, it doesn't matter so much like how well you play the piano or you can figure out songs or your understanding of theory that put you in a field, you know. It's
Hmm.
the other creative things. It's the airiness, the wispiness, the ghostiness that feel like that. And it's also the creativity of, again, the layers and layers and layers of what these lyrics are doing that all lend to put you there, you know. It's not, again, it's not like shredding or something to
Right.
escalate these songs and to give you the sensations and the very real sensations that this record gives.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's like that speaks to maybe virtuosity in the sense of like an engineer. Because I'm
Mm,
not sure exactly who engineered this. And I mean, I know that Flood had a lot to do with the recording of it, which, as a matter of fact, an interesting recording technique that happened on this album was what song was it? I want to say it was probably I think it was the song I Inside the Old I Dying.
mhm.
I think that was the song. I didn't write it down here, but where PJ said in an interview that you know, where they were recording, Flood actually set up multiple mics, like in the weirdest places, like under her chair, like behind her, like in all these like weird places. And one method that he had her to do to do a vocal take was he actually held a microphone for her in the room, and you know she wasn't blindfolded, but had her eyes closed, and he was just like, okay, just sing the song, and it kind of was a disarming tactic, so he could get a better performance out of her. But and I don't know if you can hear it, like if you listen to the song really well, like, but he supposedly like was moving the mic around, so it
Mm.
kind of sounds a little bit more atmospheric than just kind of like being right on the mic, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't know what lyric or what part that would be, but I do love the range in terms of I've always loved albums that feel like it carries like 100 different guitars, a bunch of different amps, all the pedals,
Hmm.
people again like touching things, playing with things, tweaking things. One of the things that really jumps out to me is like the range in the acoustic guitar. And I don't know if it's I inside the old year dying or I inside the I
The
inside the
old
old I
iodine.
dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one of them starts with this guitar that it's an acoustic guitar, but it is so hot that it's definitely distorting a little bit, but it just kind of it creates such a moment on the record and it really embraces you where a lot of it I feel like is kind of enrapturing you
Hmm.
on like in your periphery almost, and then the guitar and like again how it's mic'd and mixed, it just like kicks you in the chest.
Yeah.
um yeah, Flood's got an impressive resume for a reason.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. I meant to go look through his catalog, like his discography of like the work he's done. Because I know he's done some huge, massive records, but I wanted to look at the list and I just forgot to look it up. But but yeah, again, like so the mastery of recording, you know, that's
Mhm.
another big thing, which, you know, I think that you did a great job on your album. Who recorded that album?
So Andy Nelson recorded everything. Andy and I go back a ways now. Um, he has amazing taste. He mostly does hardcore and metal bands. Um, but again, his taste and how do I want to say this? Like his sort of palette is just really cool. I think a part of what makes recording with him so fun is that Mason playing bass and me and Andy, the three of us in the room, will get pretty sidetracked pretty routinely as far as like, oh, that reminds me of, and it's like pulling out your iPhone and being like, oh, it's on this song somewhere. And
Hmm.
um, I always leave, and my lyric book is filled with records and things to listen to and watch from Andy. And yeah, I can't say enough nice things. He's a delight.
Yeah, and obviously great at what he does too.
It's cool. It for having such range to what he likes to listen to. I think that, not to speak for him, but um, it's different than bands coming in and being like, okay, we wrote this record, needs to sound heavy, and he does that and he mixes it and he does a great job versus like sort of oddball me coming in and like uh what song is it? But one of the songs, what we did is I was vacationing in Copenhagen and I went to the oh gosh, I forget what it's called, the National Art Gallery there or something. And in the gift shop, they had these little wind-up boxes, like, and it plays the tune.
Yeah.
And I bought it for like €7 or something. And then we broke it and then you just twist it. And then we twisted it into a mic and then threw it in a looper and like reversed it, um,
Okay.
which is the song. This is embarrassing that I can't remember my own songs, but
There's a lot going on in those songs.
reading off my dreams.
Okay.
Um, that song is a little box that we were twisting around, kind of like one of those. Why can't I think of it? Like the ballerina, music
Yeah.
box type thing.
Right.
Um,
That's
yeah,
cool.
and I
Yeah.
mention all of that as to say it's a little different than like putting up some mics and recording metal bands,
No, I
which
know.
isn't
And
to say is wrong either, of course.
no, of course not. But I'm sure that Andy like appreciates you going into the studio and having to challenge him to record an album like yours because like you were saying, all the stuff that you recorded, like how do I, recording the room sounds of like cases closing, of like, chords hitting the floor, like chopping wood. Like this is all stuff from an engineer's perspective. This is something I don't do every day, you know?
Yeah, I'll say this. I hope the pros outweigh the cons.
It's good, man. It's very good. Like seriously, and so comparing these two records, they're both great and like for their own reasons, but similarly speaking, they're albums where obviously the artist creating it, you and PJ, are pushing yourselves to, outside of your comfort levels and obviously as an exercise in being an artist and creating because when you get stagnant and you just kind of start using the same formula to make the same stuff basically you end up in this endless loop and it can be ungratifying I guess.
Definitely. I don't like, it's not that I hate the term experimental, but I feel like experimental is so often misused around music because I feel like making anything is experimenting, like if you're
Should
making
be.
music and yeah, what you're doing isn't experimenting with whatever tool or instrument you have,
Right.
then then
You're not
it's
doing it
more like,
right.
well, it's more like doing math or an equation than it is creating something, I think.
Sure.
So, um, yeah, that's kind of been sitting there for me, waiting to be hashed out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it was very apparent to me upon our first speaking and even up till now that like you're very interested in pushing the boundaries of what you are capable of doing, and it doesn't even necessarily only apply to making music. I mean, you're obviously very interested in a lot of other things, and like, you're passionate about all of these things, and that's what led PJ to making this, to writing the book, to making this type of album, which is different than her other albums, to working on soundtracks for movies, because she also is a visual artist and she likes to do art. So, you know, it's all those things. You put it all together and then you take all your passions and then you can kind of be limitless in what you can create.
Hmm. Agreed.
Cool, man. Well, listen, we're gonna end this record because I don't think we're gonna get to the end of it, but I'd like to know what your final thoughts are as far as like your first impressions of this album is what you mentioned, but like do you see it any differently now? Or like is there anything that kind of stands out to you now about it that's important?
I'm very curious about the book, and I'm
Okay.
gonna have to do some research. I'm not good with like footnotes and translating, so I'm not sure if it will be if I'm up to speed for it. Um, but honestly, it was such a delight. She was in Chicago recently, and I wasn't able to go. The show sold out, and I had an agent reach out, and they're like, "Guest list is closed." And I reach out a few weeks later, and they're like, "Still no tickets." And I'm like, "God damn it!" So I missed it, but I watched one of her shows. It was from the European leg. I can't remember where it was from, but even like the stage setup was like it almost felt like it was like a kind of like a kitchen in the countryside almost.
Hmm.
There was like a dining room table and like a pitcher of water. So she's like filling up her glass of water rather than, just some water bottles strung about the stage. So
Yeah.
as much as this record really popped to me when I first heard it, and I was like, this is great. Um, my anticipation for the show, which I unfortunately missed, and then digging into the lyrics for this podcast and whatnot, just has me um, only the more enthused as far as what a terrific collection of music it is. And yeah, I'll be on tour the next 5 weeks, 6 weeks, but from then I'll be back on in front of my record player. Listen to this.
Sure. Maybe you can even order that book and you can kind of do some reading while you're in the bus.
Absolutely, I'll have my downtime.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I forgot that you are starting your tour tomorrow. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me. Um, Best of luck on the tour and best of luck with the record. What's the best way people can buy the record from you now?
MikeHranica.com is my website, which I try to have information about me and whatnot, but it's a little store with some of my books and Town of Lake and some other um, some other of my happenings and whatnot. And my wife and I fulfill our web store from our home, so um, it's fun, and I'm very proud. I took no turn or no shortcuts in terms of producing a really great sounding album in terms of the mastering and pressing it here in the United States and everything. So, um, yeah, thank you so much for having me, MikeHranica.com, Town of Lake, Lilac, and we'll be making more music in January.
Cool, man. That sounds great. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. Vinyl and Vision is a Psychic Static production. Theme song written and performed by
It
Jeff
builds,
Robinson.
it builds. Thursday night, broken down.